Endermen are some of Minecraft's most biologically intriguing organisms, having a multitude of unique and fascinating traits, leading to some pretty special possibilities. Now, Endermen are found in mass throughout their home dimension. Here, they seem to have reached an equilibrium with the environment. Teleportation makes traveling through the floating island safer, and their length makes reaching coarse fruit easier. Similar to sharks, this highly successful body plan will most likely remain unchanged for eons, until something or someone shifts the end's habitat. However, this isn't the only place where these beings reside. Such a resilient creature can be found everywhere in the overworld and even in the nether. Despite their seeming crippling weakness to water, they push through this disability and populate a plethora of humid environments. On the other hand, being able to detect when it's going to rain, one of the main sources of water in this world, would be incredibly useful. While evolution is far from perfect, such an overwhelming advantage would certainly be selected for. Perhaps one way this could happen would be the development of an entire third eye on their head. An organ much more sensitive than the others would be capable of making out even precise differences in the sky, detecting rainfall before it hits them. Of course, Endermen are smart cookies, being able to not just pick up and hold blocks, but even able to aim their teleportation at shelters during non-optimal weather. Given that this species naturally lives in large groups where very minimal conflict seems to happen, helping each other and their children isn't that much of a leap in terms of evolution. A culture could form around teaching their young about the dangers of weather patterns. Perhaps they could get so adept at detecting precipitation before it happens that they teleport to safety, when to other mobs, nothing seems odd. However, none of this would be possible without another major part of the Enderman's identity: teleportation. While incredibly strange, this useful ability is not unique. Coarse fruits and shulkers both possess it. It's possible that the reason for its commonality is for the purpose of population control. Children often compete with their parents for resources. Given that the End Islands are quite limited, it would not surprise me if an organism that sent competition to uninhabited islands or simply moved themselves to more resource-rich areas would do better than one which produced more adversaries. Interestingly though, the Enderman has teleportation. It also has the ability to walk on legs. Now this isn't incredibly odd, however the trend we see in natural selection is the atrophying of useless traits. Unless the body is currently using them, these adaptations become nothing more than extra baggage, spending more energy. So an organism evolving with slightly less baggage has more energy to spend elsewhere, like mating. We might see Endermen losing their signature long limbs, becoming little more than torsos and a mouth. Most likely in this scenario, their senses would increase, and using their already formidable jaws, would teleport onto their food, acting as ambush predators. Once you've reached this organism's detection range, it's already too late. This next part is mostly speculation. In the end, giant cities reach into the void. While the builders of these cities remain unknown, at least a possible candidate would be the subjects of this video. Even though we don't see direct evidence for Endermen building these structures, it's the most likely scenario using Occam's razor, and given their already impressive intelligence, not too far of a stretch. Definitely more likely than some ancient unknown civilization magically appearing in the end and disappearing. Ultimately, the ancestors of these resilient beings most likely created the buildings and either forgot the techniques used or mentally softened enough to no longer be capable of such tasks. Either way, Endermen most likely are still capable of culture, given the pack nature of these individuals mixed with the seeming arbitrariness of their behavior, such as ant cities being more aesthetically pleasing than practical, and nether Endermen love of warped forests. We can assume that Endermen living in more sheltered environments, where water is scarce and food is abundant, would quickly gain a large ego surrounding dominating other organisms. Likewise, human habitats would spawn more fearful attitudes, the rain being their punishment from an old tyrant. Now one may think that they would be a purely hunting warrior race, however it's important to note that despite all their powers, Endermen are not purely apex predators. This fact will greatly impact the way their society functions. The only two food sources in the end besides each other are shulkers and coarse fruit. Seeing as the former has a powerful defensive shell to protect against enemies, the Endermen must prey on these beings for this to evolve. Yet there are not nearly enough shulkers to support such a massive population. This means we can expect a mix of hunting and gathering wherever they choose to reside. Violence in these cultures are probably kept to a minimum, despite the fact that these beings will seemingly attack with little provocation. Simply looking at one's eyes will anger them. This seems only to be directed at Steve for some reason, perhaps an uncanny valley effect. Again, the close proximity of these beings lived together suggests at least some level of sociability. Of course, such complex beings could develop any number of ways. The similarities would most likely end there. Endermen are adaptable, omnivorous, and more than capable of reining in their instincts. These were just a few ideas I had and wish to share.